Joining us now to kick off hour number 2 is our friend Tommy P. Tom Pelissero back here from NFL Network, NFL Media Group, NFL Network Insider. I'm now done. You may now clap. I feel like this is like Jeb Bush. Now clap, please.
Hi, Rich. Hey! Studio. Brockman, that is a fantastic sweater.
Thank you, sir. It's a Home Alone house.
Yeah, well, you can't really see it. There you go.
There you go.
You got to put the laptop down. I like it. That's good.
Thank you.
That house was for sale last year.
Oh,
It's
is that right?
not as expensive as you would think in the movie.
Is that right? Did the unclaimed Paris plane ticket come with the house, Tom, or no?
Well, the thing I found hilarious about it is you would think this is like an artifact and something that would be, subject to, public type of preservation. It was on Zillow. I literally was scrolling through the photos on Zillow and being like, oh, I could move to Winnetka, Illinois, or wherever that was,
Nice.
and move in.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's dive in. You're reporting on the timeline, TikTok, of the Falcons deciding to bench Kirk Cousins and put Michael Penix in a spot we've never really seen a first overall quarterback, let alone any rookie quarterback, placed. Tom.
Well, going back to even a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about this on game day morning, it was very unlikely at that point that the Falcons were going to bench Kirk Cousins at any point during the 2024 season. That was not the intention. Obviously, when they signed him, it was not the intention when they drafted Michael Penix Jr., but it also was not the intention for Kirk Cousins to be going through one of the roughest stretches of his career on a team that right now is seeing what at one point looked like a certain playoff appearance now becomes something where they need some help here. With Cousins, everybody's looking at the last 5 games. I understand that's kind of where the numbers are. It's really been the last 3 games. There was the game in Denver where he just didn't play well, and I think that was the 4-interception game, if I remember correctly. Then there was the game in Minnesota, which was just kind of all over the place, and that was the first time I had seen Cousins play live this season, and he wasn't, bad from start to finish. It was better than the week before, but it was just off. It wasn't quite right. And then obviously, on Monday Night Football, they didn't play well as a team. Cousins didn't play well. I was struck by just watching the highlights, Rich, and I'm not an expert in quarterback play, but Cousins' greatest skill has always been dropping back, see it, and rip it. He's been an elite processor. Never had the biggest arm, never been the biggest guy, the most mobile guy, but he could see it and throw. And the number of times when you watch the highlights or lowlights from that game where he's patting the ball 3 times, where he's taking a step left and then kind of throwing back right, it just looks like his superpower, which is his brain, isn't quite overcoming some of the other things that have been the limitations through his career. He's less mobile than ever. And when you talk to players on other teams, they bring that up. The arm was never been the biggest, but now, he's been one of the most accurate downfield quarterbacks. Now that's not there either. And the Falcons were left with a choice here. You can go another 3 games because of the money you're paying Kirk Cousins and because this was the plan, and risk having your locker room looking around going, why is this guy not being held accountable? Or you roll out Michael Penix Jr. and you hope that this guy, who played 6 years of college football, albeit with several season-ending injuries in there, is ready to roll. And so it was really coming off of that Monday night game. Even going into that game, they weren't thinking we're definitely going to do this. It just didn't look better. And the moment that Raheem Morris said after the game, we need better play out of the quarterback position, reiterated it the next day, you got that sense that they were going to go to Michael Penix Jr. And this now sets off another chain reaction here, Rich, because Kirk Cousins has fully guaranteed money in 2025. He has a no trade clause. He didn't look good when he played this season. And no matter what ends up happening in terms of where Cousins is playing in 2025, there's pretty significant salary cap ramifications for the Falcons as well.
Well, that's down the road. They've got 3 pretty big games, including one against the Giants. And then if they win that one and the Eagles sweep the Commanders, then the Sunday nighter they just flexed into at NBC for Week 17 would be for a playoff spot between 2 rookie quarterbacks that finished 1-2 in the Heisman last year. I mean, my goodness, this is all in the ether, Tom. So what are you hearing from Atlanta about Penix's readiness? What are you hearing there?
The interesting thing with Michael Penix Jr., you have to remember, Rich, is he's a left-handed quarterback. And so in practice, I actually asked some people about this. How do you run the scout team reps? Because the scout team, you are running the opponent's plays. Presumably, unless you're playing the Dolphins, the opponent has a right-handed quarterback. Basically, what I was told was they run the plays exactly how the opponent would run them, but Penix just throws it as a left-handed quarterback to the same read side. In other words, the protections and things that he's even been dealing with have been sort of flipped from what they would actually look like here. It doesn't necessarily, render those reps invalid, but it's been a little bit of an unusual situation for how he's come along. Everything I've heard has been that he's looked good in practice. He's obviously, he's a bright guy. He's played a lot of football in his life. They don't think that this moment is going to be too big for him, but you're talking about, changing some things up, not just because it's a left-handed QB, but also because his skill set is going to be a little bit different than Kirk Cousins. Penix didn't run very much at all in Washington. I know he did in the playoff game where, they kind of had to because nothing else was working in that game, but he's predominantly been a pocket passer. And so from that aspect, it's going to be similar to what they had with Cousins, but you're probably going to, to change certain things up to best fit the skill set of a guy who this is really the first relevant NFL action we've seen in his career. There's not a lot of times. I mean, you go back through the last 20 years, Rich. I mean, the closest comp I can think of was, the Giants being 5-2 and benching our buddy Kurt Warner for Eli Manning. But even then, that was early enough in the season. This is, hey, the other guy's not hurt. We just think we're going to roll you out there in must-win territory. You're facing a bad Giants team this week. It's an ideal matchup, even though that Giants defense does have some talent. I'm fascinated to see just because Penix was a guy who was so polarizing in the pre-draft process. There were some coaches I talked to who said, absolutely, I wouldn't want him because of the lack of mobility, because the accuracy kind of comes and goes at times. And there were other people I talked to who had him as, one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the entire draft. We're about to find out, again, small sample size, we're about to find out, at least for year one, who's right.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Tom, big week for you and everybody else in your end of the business on the information end, because the way you will cover future trade deadlines has changed. And you know what I'm referring to, right, Tom? That you now need to know everybody's Madden rating.
Well, I don't think it hurts. I don't think it hurts to know.
Right. I mean, because that's a crucial piece of information as to whether somebody would be acquired or not on the trading block or not. Right, Tom?
Here is what I would say regarding the report that was out there on a variety of different things involving Woody Johnson. Mm-hmm. I would start by saying Woody is the owner of the team. Yes. He can ask any questions he wants. He can say anything that he wants and weigh in on all these different situations. He also says a lot of things, and they're not always dead serious. This is what, you're going to do. Similar to, did he really want to bench Aaron Rodgers after 5 games, or is he challenging the people around him, which is something that he does a lot in meetings? Sometimes when things are repeated back or secondhand, they might augur slightly differently than what reality is. And that's not to criticize any of the reporting involved. I had heard a lot of the things that were in that story, but again, you have to have the context of who's involved and what the tenor and the context of those conversations are. Specifically regarding the Jerry Jeudy trade talks, I was covering that closely. Again, I can't say for certain. I wasn't there when Madden comment was uttered. What I can tell you was that deal fell apart because the Jets wanted to offload Alan Lazard and about $10 million fully guaranteed as part of the deal, and the Broncos weren't interested. They didn't want to take on basically, what they would have viewed as dead money for a player who, remember, Alan Lazard was a healthy scratch last season, and taking on $10 million guaranteed, it would not have given them the flexibility that they hoped to get in a trade. And so that's where the deal fell apart, was the Jets were insistent that they take Alan Lazard. They wouldn't do it. The Broncos end up getting a couple of late-round picks from the Browns instead in the Jerry Jeudy trade. I think that Jeudy himself has weighed in on this. Again, I would just go back to this, Rich, and I understand Woody Johnson's a really easy target. A big reason that there's such a focus on him right now is he doesn't have a GM or a head coach. The moment that you hire the GM and the head coach, people talk about the owner a lot less. That's the process that they're going through. They conducted, I believe, 3 GM interviews this week. They'll probably pause here over the holidays, kind of pick up again as we get to the new year here. There's definitely going to be questions, but there already were questions about just the working environment and the things that various people have said coming out of that building. Anytime you have the longest playoff drought in North American pro sports, and you've had a quarter century of not a lot of sustained success, there's going to be those those questions here. There may be some things where, structures have to be examined and the way that people communicate might have to be examined here. But I don't think, in no way is it going to stop them from hiring a competent head coach and general manager in New York. But will those be a part of the conversation? Absolutely.
I would go in your notebook and find out, could that trade have been blown up because Alan Lazard's Madden rating was 76? Could that have been it? The Denver just
maybe it was too high, and they decided to pull him back out of the deal. I mean, it's hard to say.
See, I'm now somebody with tongue firmly planted in cheek here, Tom, as you can pick up on that. So, but when the big boss says something, and it was tongue in cheek when he's like, Lazard does, that Judy doesn't have a good enough Madden rating. That was something that was just said in jest, and Joe Douglas took it to mean reportedly something more literal, and communicated that to George Payton. You know what I mean? Like,
if there's an offhand comment,
yes,
right, that is relayed, and then that person relays it to somebody else, you may lose some of the context of it. Again, I would say this, and this is not a criticism of Woody Johnson, but the reality is Woody says a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that he says because he meets with people so much, because he's involved in the minutia of trade talk. And you certainly can look at that and say, is that a functional, working type of environment? He's the owner. He can do whatever he wants. He can ask anybody any question he wants here. Those are probably things that need to be examined here. But, to say that Woody walked in and slammed down a printout of the Madden ratings and said, this guy's not good enough, that's, I would fairly say, an extreme stretch.
Tom Pelissero here on the Rich Eisen Show. Just shortly before you came on, Tom, Nick Sirianni gave a will see in terms of A.J. Brown's practice status for Friday. What's going on with him? And what is it, a hamstring? Is that what's going on? What's up with
He's been
A.J.
dealing
Brown?
with that. Yeah, he's been dealing with that on and off. A.J. Brown's a guy who has various soft tissue stuff pop up here and there. He's had a knee that he manages, going back many years as well here. And we've seen him too, in a surprise, Rich, earlier this season. A.J. Brown missed a game where there were no outward signs that was going to happen. I mean, I know that he was, I believe, limited in practice yesterday here. Nick also never gives up anything in terms of his press conferences on injury status. So this is one of those, let's see what the report says based on, the tenor of how Nick's saying it. I would guess they're probably going to list him as questionable, but we'll find that out this afternoon.
Okay. Any other injury stuff that we should keep an eye on for crucial Week 16 action, not just in real world, but the fantasy world as well, Tom, that so many people are focused on this day?
The Dolphins are a little bit banged up. Jaylen Waddle's doubtful for this game. He got banged up in the last game. Tyreek obviously has had limited practice time all season. It seems like he's going to be good to go with the wrist injury. Tua is also banged up. He had a hip flexor injury, or a hip pointer rather, in the game on Sunday. His practice time has been limited as well. No signs that Tua is not going to be able to go, but if there's any type of limitations there, that obviously can impact from a fantasy perspective the other things that are going on the field. The 49ers might be down to their fifth running back potentially now, because Isaac Guerendo is dealing with a hamstring injury. We'll see whether or not he can go, but there's a lot of times where, you injure a hamstring and you're going to miss at least a little bit of time. George Pickens, hurts his hamstring in practice a few weeks ago. He's out again. He's not playing tomorrow. That'll be 3 straight games that he's missed. Probably the biggest injury headlines are the fact that TJ Watt, Pickens' teammate, is going to be good to go. Mahomes is also going to be good to go, which every response I got yesterday, Rich, after I posted on social media that Mahomes off the injury report and good to go, everyone is saying it's because it was a fake injury. He's milking it. It's all fake. Listen, if you go and try to get 1/10 hit as hard and bent the way Patrick Mahomes was, you're not getting out of bed for a week, okay? When he's limping off the field, it's legit. He just happens to be a really, really tough dude who hasn't missed a game because of injury in 5 years. Remember, he dislocated his kneecap back in 2019. Everybody thought he was done. He missed 2 games, and he came back. He's a rare guy, and I will always reiterate this when it comes to high ankle sprains. And we've seen it with Justin Herbert, who's tweaked that ankle like 3 or 4 times this season, has continued to play. High ankle sprains are an injury you can play with as a quarterback. They are going to heal. You're going to tape them up, but they're going to heal as long as you don't torque that ankle again, and then that'll set you back and you'll be in pain again. they'll heal while you're playing. The question is just your mobility in the short term. That's what I'll be watching in the game on Saturday against the Texans. You know that D'Amico Ryans and Matt Burke are going to be heating him up and seeing how well he can move. Mahomes can beat you in a variety of different ways, including from the pocket here. But don't mistake him being off the injury report as a sign that he's 100% and is going to be himself. It's going to be interesting to see how well he's moving and how much Andy Reid kind of protects him as we get into that game.
Where did the hold the phone on David Montgomery come from? What's the scoop there?
Well, it's an MCL tear, which depending on the degree of the MCL, most of those are in the 4 to 6 week range. If you have a really severe tear, like Kyle Pitts had a few years ago, and he underwent surgery for the MCL, and Kyle Pitts really hasn't been, or at least wasn't himself for a long period of time. After that, David Montgomery, who just got paid, so he's got the financial security, wanted to see if there was a way that he might be able to play here. And he ended up consulting several different leading experts and eventually was told, you can go out there and you can give this a go, not immediately here, but you can try to rehab, and it'll be somewhere in that 4 to 6 week range, and see if potentially you can get back in the playoffs here. So if the Lions can, and listen, they're going to have to win the next 3. If they do that, they'll beat the Vikings in week 18. They'll get the bye. Then you're in the 4 to 5 week range before you're back on the field in the divisional playoffs. There's no firm timetable with David Montgomery, but much like Aiden Hutchinson, a glimmer of hope that if the Lions, who are just so beat up right now and might have to outscore people for the rest of this season, might have to be trying to score 50 instead of 40 every week, there's at least the possibility that a couple of their key pieces could be back somewhere along the road in January and February.
And then who else from Detroit is in hailing distance here from the vast amount of injured reserve players? Who can Lions fans who are totally inundated with one, body blow after another piece of injury news from their team, who can they potentially look at and say, all right, that guy has a real chance to come back and help out in some crucial games?
Well, a lot of these injuries are season-ending, Rich. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing. Malcolm Rodriguez out for the year. Lee McNeil's out for the year. Carlton Davis, it sounds like will have a shot to come back. I mean, broken jaw.
Man.
That's like an injury from the 1970s. You don't see that injury a whole lot anymore. He's probably looking at like conference championship week somewhere in that neighborhood potentially to get back here. They're going to have to find a way. They've signed, I believe, at least 4 or 5 players off other teams' practice squads since Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And they've had to play all of them on the defensive side, so they're going to have their work cut out.
What about Anzalone? What about him? Is he in the realm of possible?
Yeah, that's the other one that we don't entirely know just yet. He's got a long history of different injuries. He's had that shoulder operated on like 5 or 6 times. He is a tough dude. There's a lot of guys who would have retired at this point, so I don't put anything past Alex Anzalone. But in terms of exactly what the timeline is going to be, that still remains to be seen.
Okay, and again, you may not know the answer to this one, and it may not be worth asking, but I am calling the Rams and the
I thought you were going to ask me about the free kick. I was all ready to talk about the free kick.
That's okay.
Why is that even a rule, Tom?
No, I don't.
Why anything, Brockman?
No, to be honest, it's so obscure, and it hasn't happened in 50 years. Why is it still a thing? Why is it even in there?
I mean, there's a lot of things. Why are drop kicks still allowed in the rule book either? Here's the thing. There's a lot of these little nooks and crannies of the rules that exist, and the best coaches are not just aware of those rules, but they're prepared for them. So get this. I was told, and again, there hasn't been a fair catch free kick converted in a half a century. The Chargers worked on this play on Tuesday of this week, 2 days before the game. They practiced it. They practice it every 2 or 3 weeks. And it's all because it's such a unique play, not just because it's so rare, but because the alignment and things is completely different. Because remember, all the other kickoff rules have changed, where over the last 5 years, there have been 4 different iterations of the kickoff rule. The most recent one, the dynamic kickoff, where everybody's towing the line of the kickoff line. They can't move until the ball is touched or it ends up in the landing zone. Well, this particular play, you actually have to be a yard back. You have to adjust your alignment and who's outside the numbers because the holder takes a guy off one side. It has to be a holder. You can't kick it off the tee. You can move the moment the ball is kicked, which is the only style kickoff play now that's like that. I mean, this is a really specific type of a rule that almost never comes up. And I know Jim Harbaugh said last night it's his favorite rule. He's always wanted to convert them. And he also referred to his special teams coordinator, Ryan Ficken, as a situational sensei. Because it's Ficken's the one who determines, all right, every week we're going to work some of these wacky things that you never see in practice. It just so happens 2 days before this game, they practiced this exact scenario. And if you go back and look at the broadcast, the moment they show Jim Harbaugh after the penalty, Ficken's over there going like this and saying something to Jim Harbaugh. They talk through it with the officials. They get it lined up. Cameron Dicker nails it down the middle. That's really good coaching that you don't necessarily see every week from every team.
I love it. The question I was going to ask you is if I should stop asking about Aaron Donald and bringing him up for a Rams team that can make the playoffs. Is this just impossible because of rules, because he's on a retired list, or the Rams just not going to ask him, or is he uninterested? Is there any there? Should I stop talking about it in advance of seeing the Rams next week?
And this is the one nuance here I want to make sure. I believe he's been placed on the retired list, in which case, no, he would not be eligible to come back anymore. If he were simply not on the team, which, no, he has to be on the retired list because he's not currently counted against their salary cap. So as long as you're on the retired list, no, that deadline passed several weeks ago.
Got it.
Anybody who's retired, you've missed your window and you can't come back down the stretch.
Tom, thank you. I will now stop talking about it. Greatly appreciate it. Have a great Christmas with you and your lovely family, and we'll see you on the back end of it. Thanks, brother.
Likewise, Rich. Happy holidays.
Yeah, that's Tom Pelissero right here,
right,
NFL Network, NFL Media Group. See, I'm a responsible man. I could just keep talking about it, knowing that it's impossible,
right,
rules-wise, or not even ask about that. Just be completely blind to it and keep talking about it. That's all. But I'll see the Rams next week, and I'll talk about it. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.